fall apart for Harry and Meghan? That's what a lot of people are asking after some pretty dire news has come out these last couple of weeks that really put all their post-Megxit dealings and stuff in a kind of either negative light or a very questionable light, and really kind of is causing a lot of people to wonder, is this huge empire that they were supposedly going to build, these speaking engagements, these massive production deals, podcasting, all this sort of stuff, is it beginning to fall apart around their heads? And is it something they could have controlled or something maybe they couldn't have controlled? Well, we'll go over all this today and kind of give you some examples of kind of the latest news surrounding Netflix, Spotify, the Queen and her great-grandchildren, the Jubilee, all the sorts of things. And we'll go over that today. And if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hi, my name is Brittany, and we talk about everything related to royal. So that's news, gossip, fashion, jewelry, even television shows, movies, and history. We'll do it all here. I have a ton of things planned, and I'm actually going to the Jubilee this year. I have my ticket to the Epsom Derby. I'm going to be as close to front row center as I can to give you guys kind of a feeling for what it's like to be in front of Buckingham Palace when the royals are out on the balcony. I will be giving that all to you guys, and so I'm so excited about that. And so without further ado, let's get started on today's video. And so guys, some news came out this week. It actually just came out yesterday, and we obviously got the news that Netflix lost 200,000 subscribers in the last quarter, and they're expected to lose potentially millions more. And Harry and Meghan signed this multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix, supposedly northwards of $100 million. And is it starting to fall apart? Well, maybe kind of, yeah. So Netflix has lost 200,000 subscribers. Their stock has taken a huge dip. And in addition to that, they're already starting layoffs. So kind of Netflix, when Harry and Meghan signed with Netflix, and I know I said this in another video, but it's worth repeating for if maybe this is your first time on my channel. I always thought that Netflix for them was not the greatest deal. And I actually think there's a couple reasons, because Netflix has basically pumped billions and billions of dollars of debt into creating new content. And they have some good deals with Ryan Murphy and Shonda Rhimes. Shonda Rhimes obviously created Bridgerton, and that has done exceptionally well. And I don't think really anything Ryan Murphy has created has done super well on Netflix. But they signed kind of these big producers, and they're like just pumping millions and billions of dollars into content, but they're not creating good content. I like a couple of their documentaries and stuff, but I don't like any of Netflix original series. I tried to watch one time, and it was kind of a bit marketed as like an answer to Friends, and it was like extremely explicit, and none of the characters were likable. I didn't even make it through the first episode. I should try more. Obviously, people really love Stranger Things. But I think Netflix has just waited so long to kind of ratchet up their original content, because they always had, The Office, Friends, and they do have Seinfeld now as well. But they had, these kind of big staples that caused people to come back again and again. And then they lost those. And so they were really struggling to get up content. And I always thought for Harry and Meghan, if I was them, I would have signed with Apple TV Plus. I would have signed with Amazon. I would have signed with Disney Plus over Netflix. And the reason is that these other companies have something to fall back on. So Apple TV can let something fail because it still has Apple. Amazon can let something fail because it still has Amazon. And so when Harry and Meghan signed this deal, I'm like, okay, you guys have to really create something good, because even there's stuff that does somewhat good, Netflix always seems to cancel it really, really quickly because, the production values are too high, and they just decide, well, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. And so I think Harry and Meghan are really up a creek here because they need to produce something, and it needs to be good. And so far, they've had this deal for over a year. We don't even have a release date for any of their stuff. That's problematic. They need to have a release date for something, because at this point, if Netflix is already starting to lay off people, they're looking at their content, what's an easy thing to knock off? And it's something that they're not getting any money for yet. And I mean, there were questions about whether or not Netflix actually paid for Meghan's Invictus Game wardrobe, which was like $65,000 of new clothing. Some of it could have been gifted. We don't know the details, but if you're Netflix, you're going, well, we need our money and we need more viewers. We need you to bring in viewers, because if you're not doing that, we can just drop you. And so I think that's a lot of really bad news for Harry and Meghan, in part because Harry and Meghan, and I mentioned this in another video as well, I went over this whole thing that Harry and Meghan have no background in creating original content. Meghan, her biggest contribution to Suits was the removal of love scenes. She didn't want to take her clothes off anymore, and she said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And they're like, okay. That was her biggest contribution. As far as I know, she never tried to her hand at directing, scripts, producing anything behind the scenes in the creative aspect. She didn't really do anything like that. Even her line that she designs with a department store in Canada, I mean, there was nothing groundbreaking about anything that she created for that. It was all very generic. And so like this idea that Harry and Meghan were going to become these huge producers with like these huge pieces, I mean, it's just, I don't think was ever going to happen. And then you have Netflix as well, which doesn't have a great quality control mechanism, because it's like Red Notice, that movie with Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. It was okay, but a couple of tweaks and it could have been a lot better. And, Netflix is already behind because Apple TV Plus has won the first Oscar for a streaming service for Best Picture. So Netflix has been around for well over a decade, and Apple TV Plus has only been around for maybe a year. It's like 2 years, I think, 2 or 3 maybe, and they already have an Oscar for Best Picture. And so Harry and Meghan, I think, are going to be under a lot of pressure to produce something. And will they trade off the monarchy connections for that? I mean, I'm sure that's part of the reason why Netflix hired them. Supposedly they're doing a documentary for the Invictus Games, but seems to be very much about them and not really the games. And then they went to New York and did that pseudo tour, and they were being recorded. And it's like, it's September now, they did that in September. It's now April, end of April, early May. And so we don't even have a release date for any of this. So I think Harry and Meghan are going to be under a lot of trouble and pressure from Netflix to go, okay, we've given you guys, I'm sure they gave them some start off costs. We need a product now. We need something now. We're losing money now. A recession's probably going to hit. We need money now. We need you to produce something. And so will we get anything from Harry or Meghan, or will Netflix just go, you know what, screw it, just, kick them off the cliff or something? Not really, but, let's just end the deal. That's, if Harry and Meghan are looking at that, then that puts a bad, that gives them a bad reputation in Hollywood. Will they get another deal? I don't know. So I think the Netflix deal especially is in a really bad spot. And this also goes into Spotify as well. So again, I did a whole video on the Spotify, but it was really fascinating because Harry and Meghan did a trailer for the two of them. We're doing Archwell audio. They had this little jokey thing. And then they released one single, like kind of holiday episode type of thing. And it was 35 minutes. It was okay. It didn't do well. I tried to listen to it, guys. It was exceptionally boring in my opinion. It just really was. And so and then all of a sudden, a year later, more than a year goes by, and we finally get, Meghan's going to do Archetypes, and she's, to tie into Archwell, which is so dumb, because Archwell's a terrible name. It's a terrible name for a brand. Anyways, and so she's going to do this podcast, like a whole new trailer, and so it's like, well, what happened between point A and point B? Because something clearly did. Because when their channel was first marketed, it was marketed as them together. Now it's just Meghan. So why the marketing change? Because I don't think that's a particularly good sign. And then we find out that Spotify actually let their contract with the Obamas expire. They decided not to pick it up. Now, I don't follow the Obamas super closely, but apparently their podcasts were kind of shorter and they didn't do as many of them. And Spotify's like, well, if you're not going to do much, we're just going to let you go. And so Harry and Meghan, I mean, that deal could go up in smokes for them if they don't produce something. And I really feel like Spotify had to twist their arm and go, you're under contract. We need something. Because podcasts, I mean, there is a podcast production process. I'm actually probably going to restart a podcast pretty soon, probably sometime in June with my sister, because we both enjoy royals, so we'll do it together. And so once we start that podcast, I'll let you know. And it does take some time. You have to edit out breaths you don't like, or you knock the table or something. And so it does take a little bit of time, but Harry and Meghan have people to do all the extra stuff for them. They're not, sitting there doing the editing on, Adobe or whatever. They're They just record it and somebody else does the rest. And so they don't have to come up with like probably titles or like, and so that the fact that they could not produce anything, I would be in a year with a podcast, which is easy. Meghan could have easily done it while she was pregnant, just at home. Like anybody can do, it's like podcasts are pretty easy really for the most part. Like a good mic costs about $100. And if you have that and you need a program like Adobe or something, other than that, you are good to go. And so that they could not do this, I think is very worrying for their brand. And so, you know, I wonder how close the Spotify deal, and some said that they want the Spotify deal to expire because Harry and Meghan are trying to follow the Obamas track, but they don't really have the pull the Obamas do, and they're just not that popular or interesting. And so I really think that's a lot of bad news. And this week as well, what I thought was really interesting is kind of the royal welcome Princess Beatrice got in Sweden. So she went to Sweden for the World Dyslexia Assembly because she has dyslexia. Members of the Swedish royal family have dyslexia. And so they all gathered together, and Beatrice very much was met by the Queen, you know, Prince Carl Philip and his wife Princess Sophia. And her husband was there too. And so they very much got this royal welcome. And, you know, they were in the palace and everything. It's in a stark comparison to what happened with Harry and Meghan at the Invictus Games in The Hague. So the Dutch king, King Willem-Alexander, kind of snubbed them. You know, they didn't get a private audience with the king. They did not, you know, get to stay in any of the royal palaces. And not to say that that would have happened, but I almost guarantee you there would have been a private audience between Harry and King Willem-Alexander if Harry had gone to the Netherlands for the Invictus Games as still a member of the working royal family. You know, that they avoided it also shows how kind of toxic Harry and Meghan's reputation has become, that the king, even though I'm sure deeply supports the troops, it's just not a great branding to be seen with Harry and Meghan. And so when you see that and see in comparison for Princess Beatrice, who's not even has never been a working member of the royal family, that she got this royal welcome for Harry should be kind of concerning. And I think it goes to show as well that without the umbrella of the royal family, without the support of it, without the prestige, the glamour and everything, Harry and Meghan just aren't that interesting. And they just don't have, like, they're just representing themselves. They represent nothing greater anymore. When you're part of the monarchy, you represent something greater than yourself. And so people are more willing to overlook certain things, bring you on because they're like, oh, you represent something greater. You represent your country. You represent the Queen. You know, everybody respects the Queen across the world. Everybody respects the Queen. And so that they have lost sight of that, and people are just like, well, they're just promoting themselves. They're just making money for themselves. Why do we really care anymore? And I think that's really, really bad for the future of Harry and Meghan's brand. And now you also have the controversy with BetterUp. And I think any company that promises to result in human transformation. They are the human transformation company. I believe that's what they said on their website. It's like, if anybody's promising you that, they're lying. That's what cult leaders promise you. We are going to be the avenue for change in the world. That's what, you know, sometimes cults say. I was watching the documentary on NXIVM, The Vow on HBO Plus. And, you know, he was very much HBO Max Plus, that he was very much that, you know, we are the problem solvers of the world. We're going to change everything. And so that's what I think BetterUp kind of promises. They like connect people with like coaches, but you have to pay like an arm and a leg for this. It's a couple of $100s. And so that Harry was a part of this. He's the chief impact officer, which really nobody knows what that is. He's just basically there to bring clout to it so they can just go, oh yes, we're connected with Harry. I mean, he did a podcast recently and I would just listen to it going, what does BetterUp do? Because they have Harry there talking about PTSD, and then they move it over to an office environment. And it's like, yeah, that's not the same thing. And so it's just a question of, you know, this company to me, and this is just my personal opinion, I know nothing about it. It just, the whole premise of it seems a bit shifty to me. I don't really buy into the premise. And so, but you know, it could do really well. It has like a, you know, $1 billion in investments. However, they're already starting to dock the pay, apparently, of their contract coaches. So the coaches that are under contract, they're already looking to decrease their pay. So what does that mean? Either they're not getting enough money, which would be my guess, because who wants to pay like $400 a month for somebody you don't know online to tell you, oh yeah, you should do this with your career, you should do this with your life. If you need somebody like that, absolutely search out a mentor. But it's probably better if the mentor is in your field, somebody you can speak with like personally that's not like paid, because most of the time, you can get mentorship for free. They may even cover dinner for you. Instead of you paying $400 a month for somebody to talk to you, you can actually have a mentor who pays for your lunch. That can happen. So I just look at that and it's just a little hinky, but that they're already adjusting the contracts to me shows that they're probably not making a good profit at this point. And so, but Harry's closely connected with it. And so it just makes Harry look bad, and it's just a bad sign for businesses. I mean, Spotify, Netflix, and BetterUp, it's all a bad sign. The businesses or the deals are not really going in the right direction for Harry and Meghan. And the final thing that we saw this week is we saw all the royal great-grandchildren. So that's Princess Eugenie's kids, Princess Beatrice, Catherine's, Zara Phillips, the Phillips girls, Autumn and Peter's children, Zara's Phillips children. They were all there at the palace, apparently like in carriages. A lot of people think that maybe it was like a portrait being done or like a picture being done of the kids. I think that may be kind of right. Some other people thought they were just practicing for the Jubilee. I mean, that could be the case, but I really think, especially when they're all there, because they could all practice at different times. And there's no reason why the Phillips kids would be in the carriages, because when it comes to Peter and Zara, they're not titled. They've never been in the carriages themselves. Why would their kids be in carriages for the Trooping the Color? Because they're not senior members of the royal family. So I really think it's some sort of picture. And if it is, it's another royal group picture where Harry and Meghan's children, Archie and Lily, are not in it. And that, I think, is the symbol of doom for really Harry and Meghan in this post-Megxit life, especially if they seem to want titles for their children. At this point, I've seen more of the Phillips kids, and so I'd be like, well, I don't mind, giving titles to, Savannah and Mia, because it's like we see them growing up. They actually do exist. I know people joke that Harry and Meghan's kids don't exist. I do believe they exist. But I think Harry and Meghan have played this really, really dumb game with their children. And it really damages not only their children, but their children's reputation, their reputation in the monarchy, their future in the monarchy. And so at this point, if there's another picture of Her Majesty with all her great-grandchildren, but no Archie, no Lily, then what's the point for Harry and Meghan? Because they made such an effort to connect their titles in this post-Megxit life. You always have to call them the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Heaven forbid you don't, say Meghan the Duchess of Sussex and capitalize the T. Harry the Duchess of Sussex and capitalize the T. But at this point, it's like there's such... If they don't have that strong connection to the monarchy anymore, if these kids don't have the strong connection, they're not going to get the titles. Nobody's going to care about them. And this connection to the monarchy which Harry and Meghan cling to so desperately really is pointless. And so it's just really fascinating to me how Harry and Meghan have taken this post-Megxit life, which could have been exceptionally successful, and it's crashed and burned around them. And some of it, you can't help. You can't help if Netflix is losing 200,000 subscribers. They don't produce, their original content is very much hit and miss. They have had a couple of successes, but they've also had a crap ton of failures. And so when you have that, you just don't have a great, strong foundation, and they're just throwing, things against the wall and seeing what sticks. That's what Netflix is doing. Spotify, Harry and Meghan, they were the ones who lapsed on it. A podcast is not hard to produce. They could do it. There's no reason why they haven't. We haven't had one for an entire year is ridiculous. And I'm sure Spotify feels the same way. They're like, I think this is just my opinion, but I believe that Spotify had to finally twist their arms and go, you have to do this or we will pull this deal. We will pull our money. You will owe us money back. And is Netflix getting to the same point? They're like, Harry and Meghan, you guys owe us money if you're not going to produce something. And we know Harry and Meghan have filmed themselves in New York in September. They filmed themselves at the Invictus Games. It's like, but when are these going to come out? And will they do well? Because Harry and Meghan are two very polarizing figures, and they've done exceptional damage to themselves in this post-Megxit life. Obviously, there's so many other misdeeds, but these are just the bad news things that have happened in the last 2 weeks to show that Harry and Meghan, even though they seem like they were going to make millions of dollars, some people that said they were going to have $1 billion empire. And I'm like, but why? Meghan was not successful on her own. She never became famous on her own merit. She only did it by dating and then marrying Harry. Harry really, again, he's an army bloke, hasn't really done all that much, like that they were going to become these billionaires. I always thought was utterly ridiculous. The palace connections, yes, it gets you in the door. But after that, because you don't have the close relationship with the palace, you have to prove yourself. And Harry and Meghan can't do it. And so, guys, I think really in Harry and Meghan, their empire, their dreams, their whatever is finally starting to collapse around them. So guys, let me know what you think. Do you think Harry and Meghan are really beginning to kind of watch their kind of world and their empire dreams kind of implode around them? And what will they do? What happens if they can't afford that $15 million house anymore? What will they do? How will they change things up? Will they move to New York and get a less expensive place and sell their place in LA? How will Harry and Meghan manage all this when it's becoming more and more obvious they really have nothing to offer in terms of this creative production thing that they were going to do? And obviously they do have the book coming out, Harry's book, probably Meghan will have a book at some point, and those may do very well, but still, it's a lot of questions. And I think Harry and Meghan are wondering, or at least we should all be wondering, will this whole Megxit thing totally crash and burn for them? And should they have really, at the end of the day, stayed with the monarchy and really worked within it to create a really fantastic, become really great royals? All right, guys, so let me know again what you think. I'd love to know. Thank you so much for all your comments, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye.